Yes, boys, today's video, how much protein should we actually be consuming to gain muscle? Now, this was a video requested by a subscriber yesterday, asking pretty much how to do everything in terms of the protein front. And I think there's a lot of information on the topic, but not a lot of understanding. So my goal for this video is to kind of give you the rationale based on scientific studies, literature, and keep it very simplistic, keep it nice and organized so you understand everything. But the truth is, it really is dependent on your goal, and you will need a sort of meal plan that you can actually adhere to and follow if you're going to get the best results. I'm not talking about getting, average results. If you really want to get in insane shape and you want to take this seriously, then you need to create a meal plan that allows you to get not only high quality protein, but the right amount for your goal. So if you are someone who genuinely wants a little bit of help with this, feel free to book in a call below with myself. I've got a link to work with me, and I'll be more than happy to pretty much kind of walk you through exactly what we do. But if you're someone who just wants to get a little bit of information and understand a bit more about the topic, feel free to take some notes and watch this video as I explain everything in a nice, simplistic manner. So, number one, how much protein should we be having? Exactly. So, typically, ballpark figure 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of fat-free body mass. Now, that is what the literature suggests. And I will explain this in two different mannerisms. So, for an average person who just want to put on some size and really take their training seriously and build as much muscle as possible, you want to be aiming for around 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. That's kind of what you'd be aiming for. Now, the studies do suggest that you should be focusing on lean body mass, so fat-free body mass. And the reason why this is important, because if you are someone who is perhaps a bit overweight, 250 to 300 pounds or so, it would not make sense to be consuming 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound. You would be consuming anywhere north of 275 to 350 grams of protein, and that would be quite a lot. That would actually be insane. So the studies do suggest that you should be focusing on kind of fat-free body mass and lean body mass, but realistically you can just aim for kind of body weight if you're someone who's perhaps a little bit skinnier and wanting to put on some size. But levels that you take this to and the actual seriousness do depend on your goal. But if you're someone who is just really just trying to get in better shape, then I would just focus on body weight. If you're someone who's really trying to focus on just improving body composition and perhaps lose as much weight as possible, then it might be in your interest to have a little bit less. But if you're obviously wanting to grow as much muscle, it might be in your interest to have a little bit more. And that's kind of where we use the whole body weight rather than the fat-free body mass and getting too specific. Now, what I do want to talk about is how we should actually be consuming the protein. Where should we get it from? Because we can't just be having protein shakes all day. And we can't be getting our protein from trace sources such as pasta, carbohydrate, rice. That's no good. So 75% should be from high quality whole foods. Now your perfect examples are going to be chicken, fish, steak, beef, eggs. These are great sources of protein. And the reason why is because you're getting your essential amino acids. At the end of the day, these protein shakes that you get from a supermarket, they're useful. They will supplement your diet, but you cannot make that the basis of your diet. And the reason why is because they do not have the high quality protein and the essential amino acids that your body needs. Therefore, you need to be a little bit strategic and make sure that 75% is coming from high quality sources of food. Make sure that you're obviously supplementing if you are in a position where you're fairly busy. And my recommendations for that would be some high quality whey protein. There's some great options out there, and perhaps if you're ever in a rush and you need something to go, you can grab something from the supermarket, a quick protein shake. But you've got to understand that these are there to supplement your diet, and they should not form the basis and foundation of your entire meal plan, which is very important. Now, that's pretty much kind of what I would do in terms of structuring how much we should be having and where should we be getting it from. There are a couple of misconceptions I want to talk about, and I think what I'll do is I'll actually explain these in the next slide because there'll be an analogy that will help you a little bit more with this. But two things I hear all the time and used to ask when I was younger is, number one, can you make up for your protein the next day, perhaps, or over the week? So, for example, if we need to eat 200 grams and we eat 160 grams, could we just eat 240 the next day? And I'll answer that in the next slide. And should you eat more to hit your calories? So, for example, let's say we have 50 grams of protein to consume, but we have 600 calories left for the day, or sorry, we have no calories left for the day even, and we have 40 to 50 grams of protein to consume. Should we go over our actual calories for the day just to consume the protein? I'll answer that one now, actually. The answer is no. The reason why is because effectively you're just going to mess up your diet by consuming more calories to effectively hit your protein intake. And most of the time it isn't necessary, and it's typically counterproductive. Reason why is because if we're in a deficit, right, and we're aiming to hit around 2.4k calories, right, and we need to hit another 50 grams of protein for whatever reason, we just messed up and we haven't been good with our diet, it does not make sense to basically eat that extra 40 grams of protein. The reason why is because if you times that by 4, which is pretty much how many calories are in per 1 gram of protein, you're consuming another 160, and now you're basically going over your calories just to hit your protein intake, and it's pretty much kind of messing up the way you're going to do things tomorrow, because then you're going to have to reduce your calories again to basically hit equilibrium. So if you're ever in that situation, I would not go over your calories, bulk or deficit, just to hit your protein. I would just accept, okay, that's what we've done for the day, and then basically commit to better preparation the next day. And again, it comes down to a proper strategic meal plan. If you want help with that, you know, it's a cool link in the bio. But that's pretty much kind of what I do. Now, with respect to the question, can you make up for it in one day? I'll explain this in the next slide, and I'll give you a very good analogy. So how much should we be having per meal? Typically, I'd say 30 to 50 gram, dependent on the individual. This really does depend. And I'll give you the rationale and the reasoning behind. It's why one of the biggest mistakes, and why I'm not typically a fan of the whole carnivore diet, I don't really understand the rationale behind it, is most people just seem to, and this is not everyone, I'm not saying anything about the carnivore diet, but a lot of people who do the carnivore diet think they should only have 1 meal per day. This is how real humans should eat, or whatever. Only problem with that, right, and listen, you can do whatever you want, absolutely, each their own. The only problem with having 1 meal per day is you obviously need to hit your protein intake, right? We've established that. You need to hit your protein intake to support muscle protein synthesis, support muscle growth, human function, all of this. Now, if we have it all in 1 meal, we have to realize that our body can only absorb X amount. It can only absorb a certain amount at a time. And what typically happens, if your body cannot absorb all of the protein, it will only absorb a certain amount. And what happens to the rest? Well, it will just get used as energy, and 9 out of 10 times it will just get stored as fat. Now, the problem is, for the rest of the day, your body is now not repairing itself and building muscle. Why? Because it has no protein left. The reason why is because the rest was used as energy, and the rest was all absorbed. So it all kind of went to waste, if that makes sense. It can even be excreted out as urea. So you need to be very, very careful about the actual meal timing and being very strategic about this. I'll give you a good analogy. Dr. Mike Israetel talks about this, and it's the gas tank analogy. And it's essentially, imagine if you had a fuel tank, you filled up your tank with petrol or gas if you're in America, and the maximum was, let's say, 40 to 50 grams of protein, perhaps 60, who knows. Now, if you were to essentially overflow that tank, but the maximum was 60, what would happen? If you were filling up a car with too much petrol, well, the rest would go to waste, it would leak, and eventually you would use that up. And then what happens when you carry on driving and then you run out of fuel? Okay, well, you have to fuel up again. The reason why is because you simply have none left. And as a result, you therefore need to eat more protein to gain muscle. But then now you're eating more calories, and now your calories are out of whack. But most people don't even do that in the first place. They don't replace the protein. They just assume that the protein they were consuming was essentially enough. But they didn't realize a lot of it was getting wasted. And that's something that you have to think about. You have to think your body can only actually absorb a certain amount at one time. And that's why splitting perhaps 200 gram of protein across 2 meals, 100 gram here and 100 gram here, is not the smart move. The reason why, because your body will not be actually repairing and allowing for muscle protein synthesis throughout the rest of the day, if that makes sense. So really we want to be aiming for at least 3. 3 is much better, but typically 4 to 5 is going to be optimal. And it depends on how much you're consuming, obviously, and the meal split and the meal timing really depends on, one, your schedule, and again, the amount of protein you're actually consuming. But really you want to be aiming for around 30 to 50 grams per meal. So if you're consuming 200 grams of protein per day, ideally, in an ideal world, you want to be splitting them between 4 to 5 meals, which is going to be 40 or so grams of protein. Now, the literature does suggest that you can be kind of plus or minus. For example, you can have 30 gram one meal and you can have 50 gram the next meal. that's absolutely fine. You just don't want to basically go to any sort of crazy extremities where you're just having 100 grams of 1 meal. And it's why it's very important to actually create a meal plan. That means you're not consuming, and this is something I did, by the way, not consuming all of your whole foods towards the evening when it's dinner time. Not having 4 chicken breasts for dinner, because that's just pretty much all of your protein intake in 1 meal, and the chances are a lot of that is not getting used properly and efficiently. So if we're actually focusing on muscle growth and trying to build the best physique possible and trying to actually really build an elite physique and use all of our protein effectively, it's going to be in your interest to split your meals accordingly. It's why most bodybuilders have 6 meals per day. It's why you'll see that their meal 2, meal 3, meal 4 is chicken and rice. There's a reason why bodybuilders will eat chicken and rice at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Why? Because 75% of your food should be coming from high quality protein sources. Reason why: essential amino acids. And 2, they're not eating 300, 400 grams of chicken breast. They eat much less portions spread out throughout the day. The reason why is because it's so important that your body is absorbing that. So with that being said, make sure you're consuming protein with every single meal. Make sure you're splitting it up and ideally having it across the day. Do not just be consuming 1 meal. And this is coming from someone who not 6-7 months ago was literally having 2 meals per day. I would have steak and 5 eggs, and then I would have chicken breast and 5 eggs, and have 100 grams of protein in 1 meal and 100 grams of protein in the second meal. And I look back knowing what I know now and laugh, because all of it was just going to waste. It was just silly. Spending money and just not actually getting the return that I was after. I was in this game to build muscle, but really, because I didn't actually clue myself up and understand the literature, actually understand the scientific data behind why and how we consume protein, it was silly. So hopefully this is a good lesson, and it will teach you that really you should be splitting your meals accordingly and making sure that you're eating protein with every meal, splitting it so you're having a certain amount per meal, and you're not just consuming, I'm making this very specific, you're not just consuming all your chicken breasts or your fish or your beef in 1 meal at the end of the day, and then having no protein in the early parts of the day, because your body won't absorb it. And just think of that kind of gas tank analogy. Your body can only take a certain amount, and what happens the rest, it starts leaking out the car, and eventually it just all goes to waste. So make sure you understand that. That's how much we should be having per meal. And that kind of gives you a bit of rationale and reasoning to why we shouldn't be making up for it in one day. So for example, if we were to have 160 grams of protein with 40 grams shy of our 200 goal, and we had 240 the next day, well, again, if you were to divide 240 by 4 meals or so, you're now consuming 60 grams of protein. But really, we're trying to aim for it on a day. You weren't filling up your gas tank enough the day before, and now you're overflowing it. So again, if we're looking from an efficiency standpoint, you're probably not doing the best thing you can. So it comes down to preparation, and that's why having a meal plan and actually understanding what you're eating, having something that's very, not, I wouldn't say strict, but it's just something that's just really easy to follow and not changing all the time, is going to be very, very useful if you're someone who's genuinely wanting to get in amazing shape. That's what I would do with protein, if that makes sense. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is the anabolic window. This is something that is spoken about a lot, something I used to believe. Is it true, the anabolic window? Do you need to be consuming protein instantly? Very well. Now, the truth is, it is true, but not in the way you think. You don't need protein instantly. There are studies to suggest that you need to be consuming protein perhaps up to 4 hours after exercise. So it doesn't need to be instantly. However, there is a glycemic window, which studies suggest that you need around 30 to 50 grams of carbs within 30 minutes of performing, apologies about the spelling, I wrote that earlier, performing exercise, alongside protein ideally. And the reason why we say alongside protein is because essentially carbohydrates allow for better absorption of protein when digesting. So it's ideal to have the two, not to mention kind of what I just spoke about, having protein with every single meal. So it's in an ideal world to combine the two. But really, after any form of intense exercise, whether you've played a football match, whether you've done some intense cardio, whether you've gone to the gym and you've weightlifted, done some resistance training, it's going to be in your interest, and it's very important to be replenishing the glycogen that you have expended, that you have lost, aiming for around 30 to 50 grams of carbs. Now, what I would do, just copy my post-workout meal: a bagel, honey, and a scoop of whey protein. That's pretty much what I have, and I literally pack that in my gym bag. Typically what I like to do It's because I do cardio straight after the gym. I lift and then I have my protein shake, and I will probably not have the bagel and honey. I might have a kiwi. I'm onto kiwi at the moment. Kiwi's pretty good, and 100 gram of blueberries with me, which will allow me to hit those gram of carbs, and a scoop of protein, which I just fill up with water and then have on the Stairmaster whilst I'm doing my cardio. And then I get home, grab a shower, have my last meal, and that will kind of help me with the glycemic window. That's the anabolic window that actually does matter. You don't need to be consuming and necking protein shakes straight after. The only thing that matters in the way of protein is making sure that, one, you're not under consuming, so you're at least having around a gram or so per pound, perhaps a little bit less if you're someone who's just wanting to lose a lot of weight and aren't really bothered about muscle growth. But again, a gram to 1.2 pound. And the most important thing that you can take away from this video is meal timing, protein absorption, and understanding exactly why we should be splitting meals across the day, why we should be having protein per meal, and what the pre and post workout meal actually does for us, why we should be having glycogen pre and post workout, and what the anabolic window is. Is there actually one? There's a glycemic window, and it's not too complex of a topic. Like, it is pretty simple, but I think there's just a little bit of misinformation and not a lot of understanding. And I wanted to just kind of give a bit of information about how we absorb protein, what you should be doing, and the mistake a lot of people typically make, and that is just having 1 meal per day or 3 meals per day and consuming way too much protein, or perhaps not preparing their foods in a way that allow for them to consume protein per meal. That's something you need to be thinking about, and if you're not doing that, I would highly recommend doing that. And again, if I'm being completely honest, it comes down to having a solid meal plan. So again, if you're someone who genuinely wants to build an insane physique, you need to have that meal plan in place. And if you're someone who wants to have that sorted, feel free to click the description below, book in a call myself, and I can pretty much kind of walk you through exactly how we do things. But other than that, that's pretty much the basic guide you need to follow. And I hope that kind of clears things up in terms of how much protein we should be consuming. You can be over consuming protein. There's no doubt in that. That's why we aim for those ballpark figures there. If you over consume, what happens? Very simple. Gas tank analogy. Your body just stores it and uses energy, and it goes to fat. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to get kidney stones and all this shit. It's not that detrimental to your health. It's just going to cause for excess fat gain, which is not ideal. So be making sure that you're just remembering 2 things from this video. Number 1, follow back those kind of ballpark figures, 1 to 1.2 gram per pound. And also, if you want to get really specific and you're someone who's on a big weight loss journey and not highly focused on muscle growth, perhaps just focus on lean body mass and focusing on actually comparing the gram per pound to that. And then also just mainly meal timing and making sure you're absorbing protein with every single meal, and also following the glycemic window and not worrying too much about consuming a protein shake, on your last set, preparing it. You don't need to do that. That's pretty much what I'd say in terms of protein, how you should be consuming things. If you're someone who struggles to hit your protein intake and you're looking to hit 200 grams of protein and it's so difficult, if you just follow all of the tips here and just focus on whole foods, I guarantee you it will not be difficult. If you are eating chicken 3 times a day, if you are eating fish, steak, beef, if you are eating these whole foods, they are packed with protein and you should have no struggle eating them. It just comes down to preparation, and that is the main thing. You do not need protein shakes. They just help for when you're busy, and they do help if you don't want to be cooking as much, but really you can be hitting your protein intake just from these whole foods, and it's going to be in your best interest because it is the highest quality form of protein. So I hope that all makes sense. That is today's video. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'm going to do a video on the best training splits you should be following and the reasoning behind it. So hope that was useful, boys. It's a little bit of a later one. It's 9 p.m. Wasn't going to record this video. I'm a little bit tired, as you can tell, but I can't miss a day. So I hope that was useful. Any questions, you know where to find me. Other than that, boys, back tomorrow morning with another one. Catch you on the next one. All the best.